Simply put, life without music is a wrong life, a weary life, and a life of exile. Respecting a strong faith is not proof of a strong faith, but vice versa. If a person has a strong faith, he or she can fall into the luxury of skepticism. A person with a personality has a typical experience that is always repeated. Appearances to pretend to be true. Marriage, that's the will of the two to make one. It is more than one thing to achieve. As a man of this will, I call it marriage to deal with each other's plight. Marriage is a long conversation. Before you get married, ask yourself the following questions. In other words, can I still have a good conversation with this woman even when I'm old? Insects never have a bad mind, but they are flesh-eating because of their instinct to live. It is the same with the critic. What the reviewer needs is blood in our flesh, and therefore our distress is no problem to them. Common property, a word that contradicts itself. A common thing has no value. A man who fights a monster must be careful not to become a monster himself in the fight. If we look into the monster's abyss for a long time, the abyss will also look into us. She is beautiful and clever. But I'm sorry, she could have been much smarter if she wasn't beautiful. Nearsighted men and women love each other. To treat a man and woman you love, giving them slightly stronger glasses can sometimes make you feel better. There is rather joy in life in hardship. A voyage without wind waves, how monotonous. The more hardships I suffer, the more my heart beats. Creation is both a salvation of suffering and a consolation to life. To create, however, requires a lot of change as his own suffering follows. Philosophy is highly valued by having the public replace religion. A Superman is not only a man who goes on with what he needs, but also loves his sufferings. A friend deserves to master the presumption and silence. All truths that are silenced become poison. A voyage without wind waves, how monotonous. The more difficult it is, the more my heart beats. What is inevitable is not just to persevere, but to love, not to shield it. It would be good to start a day's life as follows. In other words, when you open your eyes, it's good for just one person today. So think about what you can't do to please him. Biracial children are forced to create a mixed sense of morality. Generally, biracial children are meaner, more cruel, and more emotionally unstable than we are. The wrongs committed by a good man are worthy of respect. That is because it is more beneficial than the truth of a nobody. A man with a good friend will surely have a good wife. A good marriage depends on the gift of friendship. I'm meant to be. Men and women have never been in charge of political power together. Therefore, women do not have equal rights with men. And they can claim without hesitation that it is natural that women are inferior to men. In conclusion, it is impossible for men to be dominated by women. A man must know that a woman is not only a lump of land, a property that must be hidden, but also a creature that is destined to be subjugated, but also completed through subjugation. The act of misinterpreting the fundamental problem of men and women, and dreaming of equal rights, and equal privileges and duties, denying the inherent antagonism and necessity of tension that distinguishes men from women. This behavior is typical of women's intellectual simplicity. In my view, philosophy is a terrible bomb that puts everything in danger. As I have always heard, and have done so far. Philosophy is a willing life on an icy mountaintop. Internal relations have become a concept corrupted by the marriage system. Do you want to live in peace? Then always stay in the crowd. And mix up in the crowd and lose yourself. What is your conscience telling you? Be who you are. If it is impossible to live confidently anymore, choose death with dignity. The obedience to morality is slavery, vanity, selfishness, resignation, dismal madness, abandonment of ideas and despair. Moral contempt is a far harsher insult than any other kind of crime that impairs human character. Compassion is the greatest insult. The joy of climbing is greatest when you reach the top. But my best joy lies in the moment of climbing up the rugged mountain. The harder the road is, the more heart beats. Think about when all the hardships in life disappeared. Nothing could be more stark than that. If sexual desire had not had such a blind, careless and thoughtless nature, mankind would have perished. The original gratification of sexual desire is nothing to do with the breeding of the species. It is absurd and extremely rare that sexual intercourse involves the intent of reproduction. If the goddess of music had spoken instead of sounds, people would have covered their ears. All beliefs are dangerous enemies of truth greater than lies. All the gods are dead. Now we hope that the superhuman will live. Being a cultural nation is nothing more than a modern idea. This side feeds on the other side, and that side thrives at the expense of this side. Every great age in culture is a period of political collapse. Of course, a woman can be a man's friend. But in order to keep the friendship strong, some physiological antagonism must help. In revenge and love, women are more barbaric. Couples' life is like a long conversation. In a marriage everything else changes, but most of the time together belongs to a conversation. No one is as good at lying as a man of resentment. Nothing burns men as fast as rage. A person should have a good memory to keep his promises. A person should speak only if he or she should not remain silent. And you have to tell them what you've been through. Everything else is but useless. People think of lust when it comes to pleasure. Think of sensibility as sensibility. Think of one's lower abdomen as one's. So these three good things cost me my honor. The value of a person can only be measured in relation to others. When love flows into a man's heart, he does nothing bad, and does more than he cannot obey or virtue. Love always has some insanity in it, but there is also always some saneness in it. When in love, people endure much better than ever. In other words, you risk everything in the name of love. The fear of love is that love changes more than it breaks. Where there is life, there is will. But that will is not a will to life, but to survive. Being strong in both good and evil is the most powerful force. There is more happiness in the world than we can find with our gloomy eyes. Let those who are hard to keep their virginity abandon it. It is better for him than to force him to keep his virginity to the path of hell, and to turn into the path of the mud and sexuality of the soul. The worthless, the German. God is dead. The recent event that Christianity's faith in God has become unreliable has already begun to cast its first shadow over Europe. It is impossible for God to exist. And it is also impossible that God does not exist. Even the most courageous of us don't know what courage they really know. He who can't throw anything away can't feel. When you wake up in the morning, start the day with the thought that you should give pleasure to one person first and foremost. To the right extent, possession frees man. If you go too far, the possessor becomes the master and the possessor becomes the slave. How deep you suffer almost determines your position. One day anyone who wants to learn to fly must first learn to stand, walk, run, climb and dance. Man cannot fly right away. How deep one can agonize determines one's position. A number of sighs. Some husbands lament that their wives have been seduced, while the majority of husbands lament that no one is trying to seduce their wives. Women understand children more than men, but men seem younger than women. The fact that a woman can keep her cool almost anywhere, Like a wasp in a hive is evidence of cunning. A woman is a pretentious shell. A woman's love makes her what the man who loves her thinks. A woman is vindictive and doesn't forget. This attribute comes from a woman's weakness, just as she shows sympathy for others' misfortunes. When women struggle to win equal rights for men, that's also a sign of disease. There is no doctor who doesn't know it. Rather, a truly feminine woman rejects all those rights by mobilizing her hands and feet. The laws of nature, and the endless war of sex, will give a truly feminine woman the ultimate victory. It was God's second mistake to make a woman. A woman's first and last mission is to have a child in the world. The so-called love marriage that comes from a love affair makes errors father and desires mother. Whoever laughs best today will laugh in the end, too. Only the creators can make them disappear. Thinking that does not lead to moderates, moderate and sound leads the world. Courage does not kill people, it makes them stronger. We have one thing to learn from cows. In other words, it is a counter-reference. Our fate still wields influence on us even before we learn its nature. It is our future to scrap our rules today. The skinniest part of our bodies is the penis. It is also this genitals that are the most impediment to human beings thinking of themselves as gods. Even the most courageous of us have little courage to do what we know. Destiny. Get out of the way. Courageously, I'm coming. Truth without laughter is not truth. The great thing is to determine the direction. A great man is a man who knows how to overcome adversity and loves it. Where does greatness come from? Who is great? Why do people call him great? What makes him look great? That's because he's always shown his integrity to himself. It made him great, and it made him look great. Physical desire is to grow faster than love. The most vulnerable thing in the world, while the hardest thing to conquer, is human vanity. No, man's vanity is that when he is damaged, he gets stronger and swells up in a ridiculously. Only humans suffer deeply in this world. Therefore, humans were forced to invent laughter. The unhappiest and most depressing animal is, of course, the most cheerful animal. Humans are made of wood so many oaks that they cannot make boards straight. Humans are like trees. The higher the tree goes up to the brighter. The stronger its roots go down the ground, towards the darker, and toward the bad. 100. Man is created only in love, hiding in the shadow of the illusion of love. Is man nothing but a failure of God or a failure of God? Imagine a time when all the hardships in life disappeared. What a sissy thing to be, isn't it? If it's something that doesn't kill me in a military school of life, it makes me stronger. The purpose of life is constant progress. Down below there are hills, streams, and mud. There are not only smooth paths to walk. A ship sailing far away cannot go quietly without encountering wind waves. Wind waves are always the friends of the advancing ones. There is rather life's joy in hardship. What a monotonous voyage without a wind wave. The more hardships I suffer, the more my heart beats. It is noble of you not to waive your responsibility, nor to try to pass it on to others. When it is no longer possible to live proudly, one should die proudly. Freedom is about having a commitment to self-responsibility. A lot of talent is more dangerous than one less talent. When you see a person in despair, courage rises for anyone. There is nothing like a woman's illness in that she controls, oppresses, and has a nasty temper. There is nothing on earth that consumes a person more quickly than a rancorous passion. Truth is hideous. We have art so as not to be destroyed by truth. The magnitude of progress is assessed by the magnitude of the sacrifice it requires. If you love the truth, you will be rewarded not only in heaven but also in this land. How can the midday light tell the depth of darkness?